Of life?
Well, he's at the next level. Everybody keep your fingers.
4, 3, 2.
Look, he comes up with ultimate. Jeez, come on.
It used to not happen cold winters.
If you hit that, the list comes up with all of them.
He did.
No one's talking about global warming.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday, February 18th Select Board meeting. This meeting will be broadcast live and recorded by Foxboro Cable Access. Okay, we'll start with the pledge. We have a new victim tonight. We're going to meet in a couple of minutes, so Mike, I am going to ask you to lead us in the pledge tonight.
Perfect. Thank you, Madam Chair. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I don't think anybody's here for citizens input. Anybody online? Okay. I think everybody we see, the two that would brave the cold weather to be here for citizens input. Okay, so next up, we'd like to introduce a new employee, a new HR director, Mike Mullen. Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm excellent. How are you, Madam Chair, members of the board?
Good.
Thank you for having me.
Bill and I got an opportunity during agenda prep to meet Mike, but Mike, can you, just in case any of the other board members, I don't know if anyone's run into you yet or not, would you
no, I haven't had the
introduce yourself and to everybody at
opportunity.
home and just give us a little background and what led you here to Foxborough?
Well, thank you, first of all, for the opportunity. Like, as you mentioned, my name is Mike Mullen, and I'm pleased to be here tonight to introduce myself as your new HR director. I've been here in Foxborough for just over a week now, and I've jumped right in, and I hope I've been really able to hit the ground running with everything going on. Just like a little bit about me, I've had a number of roles in the last 8 to 10 years, including having served as a town administrator for the town of Dayton, and also as a county director for the county of Norfolk, where HR management and collective bargaining has been a huge focus of everything I've done. The opportunity to take those experiences and, work for a community that really values the professional government with a team here, is incredible. The whole experience I've had onboarding, and meeting employees and our department heads, it just really reaffirmed that Foxborough is where I want to be. Paige, Katie, again, the chiefs, the whole team, have been incredible. And, to jump right into, all of our ongoing bargaining efforts, everything that the town's been really doing to professionalize HR. The opportunity to help really continue leading that has been incredible. I look forward to diving further in, immersing myself in the town, and really calling Foxborough a work home, for the next however many years. I'm really excited to be here. So thank you.
This is a pretty special town, some
Thank you.
pretty special employees.
Agreed.
Anybody have anything they want to ask Mike, or?
Just a little bit about your collective bargaining experience.
Yes. When I was working for Norfolk County, I was responsible for negotiating and working with the 3 bargaining units there, and I did that all through the COVID pandemic. We had a few tricky situations there, which I was able to manage successfully, and never had a problem there. Working in the town, working for the town of Dayton, I negotiated twice. I came to really successful cost sustainable agreements with police and fire twice, and I also worked with the town's clerical union, the highway department, clerical, highway, and there's one more for the life of me, clerical, highway, there's one more, but yeah, I mean, we always had up-to-date current agreements that were informed by fiscal forecasting, in projecting out where we were, not only for the year we were talking about, but way into the future as well. And I've had an ability. I've had a real good ability to do that, and along the way to be able to maintain and build the relationships that you need to do to be productive as well.
I can say Mike has stepped right in. He came even before he started the week prior. He stepped into one of our union negotiations, and he's been to a couple last week. And I can tell he has a great grasp on the financials and also in the negotiation portion of it. So it's a great asset to have him on our team this time. So we were lucky to grab him.
Great. Deb, anything?
Then welcome.
Thank you very much.
Gentlemen?
Look forward to working with you.
Yeah, no, congratulations. Glad you picked a good town to work with.
For having me again.
And Mike's going to be working with the Personnel Board on a few initiatives, so you'll probably be seeing him again in the near future. And also my review's coming up, so he's going to be managing that with you also. So you'll be seeing his face.
We look forward to it.
Thank you. No, I look forward to it as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming in, Mike.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you, Foxborough.
Okay, next up, we have discussion on a couple citizens petitions for a town meeting. So I'm assuming we have John here, and Jack, you coming up to help too?
John Mahoney, 41 Putnam Road. I'd like to thank the board for the opportunity to present to you tonight, help inform you about these two items. I'm just going to pass out a quick couple things to let you know what we'll be taking a look at. If you could take one and pass it along, please.
And I think we have DPW on Zoom.
So I have extras, so I have a presentation to advisory committee tomorrow night, so if you can pass the extras down to the end, I'll need them for tomorrow. So we have two citizen petition articles on this year for the town meeting. The first is to deal directly with some dangerous roadways we have in town. And I've been a resident in town for about 8 years, and I've been focused on having safe, reliable, efficient, usable streets for both our vehicles and our pedestrians. And there's about 6 areas in town. I met with the DPW Director, Chris Gallagher, Lance, who was the prior engineer, Chief Grace, and Lieutenant Hoffman. I've talked with from the Foxborough Police Department, and there's about 6 areas in town where there's a high likelihood of crash, conflict, and history of crashes and conflict in town. One of them is being addressed currently, which is Walnut Street and 140, which is quite a major undertaking. And I'd like to push the town to try and address 2 other areas that are quite dangerous and have a history of problems. The first is Route 106 and South Street. I have a packet. It starts off with this packet here. You can take a look at. So back in September, we had a dual fatality accident. A couple was hit trying to negotiate that intersection. For those of you who are familiar with it, it has extremely tough sight angles, and I would say that for anyone with neck problems, to enter this intersection, you have to look like this. If you fail to do that because you don't know this intersection, or you can't do it because you have neck issues, you're just going into that intersection blind. And this is an area that, with a better design, can prevent this kind of risk and issue. And it's on both sides of the street, both Green Cedar Street and South Street. Entering onto 106, you have traffic going well over 40 miles an hour, up to 50, even 60, and you have people going in blind on both sides of the road. What I'm looking for here on both of these items is money for the design. On 106 and South Street, 106 and South Street is one of the complete street listed projects. The way that Complete Streets works is if the town does the design, they can submit to the state to get complete street funding. This happened recently with the redesign of East Street, which was a similar kind of intersection. It was a triangular intersection. Now it's been made into a T. But the Complete Street program works in that every 3 years, a town can submit for funding up to $400,000, but the town must do the design and engineering plans first. So for 106 and South Street, it would be about $100,000 to do the design, and then the town can put forward the request to the state to get the Complete Street funding up to $400,000 to do the construction. And as East Street was done 3 years ago, the town is now eligible to request that funding again. So I think that's the right place that we should go forward and ask for this funding. The second area of town is the plaza around Commercial. There's a map of Commercial Street, 140, the Ocean State Job Lot Plaza. Okay, so between Central Street and Hersey Pond, where the current construction of Route 140 ends, this is the area of town where basically the most crashes happen. What you have is a significant amount of traffic backing up on Central Street. The first two images will show typical time of day. There's probably 10 cars all the way back, going all the way back to Elm Street. People get nervous, they want to make a left-hand turn. However, there's 40 and 50 mile an hour traffic coming from the center of town and coming off the highway from the Mansfield direction. And you also have people making left-hand turns out of the Shell Station, Pup Gino's and Ocean State Job Lot Plaza. And when, I don't know if Chief Grace wants to talk to this as well, it's my understanding that this is the area of town that, has the most crashes. And the week that I submitted the petition, I saw a crash, both cars were totaled, taken away on tow trucks. And this is another item to do the design would be about $200,000. And then we can submit the design to the Mass DOT to do tip process, just like with the Walnut Street rebuild. The town came forward with an idea, brought it to the state and federal government. Because we had the plans, we were eligible to get funding later. And if we can do that, it kind of gets us onto the next step of getting funding to do that area. So for 106 and 140, I want to let you guys see the packet, ask any questions before we move on to the next one.
If I could just put a dose of I'm not saying that these steps aren't necessary, particularly over to the Commercial Street one I'm talking about, because I'm the one who did all the grants to get it. And the only reason we got the grants was the housing. So to get on a tip, I mean, you're talking probably 15, 20, 25 years, especially that little stretch that doesn't have compelling. So just a reality check that the chances of us getting that state funded without some sort of trigger like 200 housing units is slim to none.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Paige, wasn't there a study done by the state 7, 8 years ago from the center of town all the way to Norton, that whole 140
There was a Serpent
stretch?
study. Yeah.
And, certainly we brought up at the time, do you remember that survey too, Chief?
I haven't read it.
So you do remember it. And I know part of our input was Walnut Street at the time, and certainly Commercial and Central Street. And if you remember, state didn't think very highly that it was as important an area for change than others along that strip, if I could just be very succinct and to the point. And obviously, we thought the Commercial and Central Street, and even more so the Walnut Street, was very important to have the state looked at, and they didn't think it was a very high need, at the time.
The fact that they didn't want to move forward 5 years ago doesn't mean they won't move forward today. We have to take it on a positive note and push for it.
But my only concern on something
I'm,
like
I'm
that.
not disagreeing
No,
with
no.
you that the past wasn't as you say.
Right, my only concern is that's what they're gonna look at, though.
Yes.
You know, if we present it to them, they're gonna look back and say, well, we already looked at this. Not that it doesn't need to, I would love to put a light on Commercial, and Central Street. Yeah, sure. You can sit wherever you want, Chief.
So it's nice that everybody agrees and everybody's on the same page. Obviously, the process and the funding are the big issue. So, and Chris, inject yourself whenever you feel. So we had a meeting last week with Mass DOT looking at the Commercial Street situation where we have 5 different points of egress along that Ocean State area. The state has now, first of all, they clearly said without a major economic project, any kind of mitigation to that roadway is not something that they were 100% receptive to jumping on. But the state has moved all of their accident reports online. Everybody can access this. So what they are doing is they're starting to compile their data. And this area now has moved up as a, Chris, if you could remember what they said, but it has moved up on the priority scale. Like what the town manager said, if it wasn't on that scale, you'd never see it. So the data is showing that the numbers are increasing. So we have a better shot at the TIP grant. This area, we all live in town, it's a mess, right? We got the Shell Station, we have the Ocean State Lodge, we got Papagino's, the angle of that road and the pitch, the line of sight, and then we have Central Street. So we have a lot of things going on there. Historically, we average about 39 accidents from Forbes Boulevard all the way down to Central Street a year. That's our number. Most of them are property damage, and there are some with injuries. This has been consistent for the last 3 years. There is a lot of hope that the Walnut Street intersection will finally give a pause or a break. We did ask, and Chris and I kind of called for a rather urgent meeting to say, hey, what can we do? When we saw the charter school building a back entrance, we noticed that there was a stack up or a queuing in the middle of the road, and we had all the cars driving in the breakdown lane in front of the Shell Station. We tried to mitigate it with cones. We had signboards, no travel. So Mass Highway was very, very receptive. As soon as the weather breaks, to put this on the top of the list and remark all of that area with turning lanes so cars could stack appropriately and designate passing lanes, authorized passing lanes, not traveling in the breakdown lanes. So drivers wouldn't be confused, because sometimes some people adhere to the law and they wait. Maybe the car behind it waits, but 4 cars back has no patience, and now we end up with these collisions.
Would they do the same thing at Commercial Street?
Which they did, what they did for the charter school?
Yeah.
Yeah, so the goal is to take it all the way, because Mary Lou's is coming in too. So we just know that's gonna create, at the Shell Station, more vehicles. So the goal, and Chris can talk about as well, is to look prior to the Shell Station all the way and include that Central Street. So that way we at least have cars that are safe. Now, is it going to flow any faster? No, I think there's an issue. The volume count on that road is staggering, and the infrastructure doesn't support it. So it's going to be slow, and it's not going to speed up. It's not going to give people, we did ask if we could get a turning lane right down the middle. They were not receptive to that at all. Though it sounds very good, and you see it in different parts, they just didn't feel the signage, the design, and the driver. We don't see it a lot, and there could be a lot of confusion with it. They just weren't comfortable with that. So I think we're going to see some change down there very quickly as soon as the weather breaks. I tried to get them now. They said they absolutely not. Well, obviously not right now with the ice, but the cold.
Florida.
Yeah.
So, question if I might, Steph?
Yeah, absolutely.
So on something like this, with potentially the state going to do a little something to help us, should we still look into a $200,000 study?
This would be a design, so a study is, should we do it or not? A design is, here's the blueprints to do the construction. So study, design and engineering, construction. The study's done, this is the second step, which is, this is what it will look like when we build it.
Can I ask you a question, Paige? When you did Walnut Street, what did it cost for the design on that?
200, the design, 200,000,
Just for the Walnut Street thing? So now we're talking an area,
more than 200. I think we got a quote for 200, and we had to go over because we had to add but yes, so it was 200.
but that's just for that
Just for the
section
desi-
there.
Yeah.
And now we're talking an area that's twice that size with commercial and then the
A
residential
lot
side.
of, a lot of,
So I'm not even comfortable with the $200,000 number.
So that is the number that I discussed with Chris. That's the number I'm bringing, is what Chris had suggested, if there's something different.
Well, so I guess to Paige's original point, though, while I respect what you're doing
Yeah.
and the way how you're trying to approach getting something fixed this way, I agree with Doc. I think if the state is going to do something on Central Street, we should see how that initially works before we jump all over saying that it's not going to work, okay? Because if it does work, then obviously we've accomplished something here. But the other side is I'm very nervous that we're doing stuff like this through a citizen's petition rather than through town strategic planning and design, and working with the DPW and the police department to determine where our most critical needs are and how we're going to address them. Because if we start doing this, this way, it's like then, I don't know why we have Chris in that gang, because it's like that's what their job is to determine how to best handle the resources they have. Now, they know they don't have, $5 million to play with. So that's part of the problem. And you're not solving that problem at all. Actually, you're taking part of the funding that they have away. So I'm concerned with, I agree with the safety concerns on both of these locations. I drive them both. But I'm not sure that this is the right way to attack this particular beast. And I especially feel that Central Street, if the state is willing to try something, because again, if they make that breakdown lane to go onto Central Street, and use the breakdown lane as a true passing lane, that will make a big difference, because right now, the chief is right. Half the time, people will do something, and half the time they won't.
Yeah.
And somebody else will do it. And then all of a sudden, that's when the accident happens.
And they talked about narrowing, forcing people to slow
Right,
down.
right. Oh, and the
Making them
speed is not
aware.
50, miles an hour in that area.
No, it
So-
goes up to 50 quick, but it drops
Yeah,
around.
right.
So
Does it
40
stay at
through there.
the current speed when they finish this Walnut Street redesign and stuff? Speed limit's still going to be the same? You're right, you come off the road.
It goes
It goes
up to
40
50
miles
at
an
the
hour
top.
all the way up to 100 Central Street, where the state road ends. So it goes from 50 to 40, and then it goes to 30, and then we hit 20 at Wall Street.
So what I would suggest, Bill, is we agree there's areas in town that are deadly dangerous, and they have been for a long time, and they need to be addressed. And whether they're addressed through a citizen petition or an outward plan, if they're not addressed ever, we're 106 and South Street has been that way for how long?
if I could just jump in on this one, because I think Chris might want to speak on this. After the accident that you provided pictures to, Chris did go into action and has retained. Chris, do you want to talk about TEC and kind of where we're at?
Yeah, so, the two intersections we have, Commercial Street and Central Street is a Mass DOT-owned intersection. That
Chris,
one,
we can't hear you that well. I don't know if it's on your side or our side.
Turn it up.
Maybe Mr. Beck will turn you up a little.
all right.
Try now.
I think you're good.
How about now?
No.
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 Still no?
Nope.
You're gonna have to yell.
Okay,
Well, listen.
we can hear.
All right. So the two intersections we're talking about, Commercial and Central Street, is Mass DOT owned. We've recently pushed them to make some changes through that stretch, like Chief was saying. Ideally, we would give them an opportunity to work on that and then continue to push them to make further improvements. They're hesitant without any change in that Ocean State Plaza to make any changes right away or to force any readjustments. Similar to what Shaw's Plaza just did in Sharon with all those traffic signals that everybody's scratching their head at, reason to push for that change over there. That stretch through Commercial Street is going to be some lane striping, narrowing, and a left turn lane to go into the plaza as well as on Central Street once you get to that corner. So they have talked about doing that. We should have a design from them for that striping plan within the next couple of weeks. At which point, as soon as the spring breaks, they'll go ahead and restripe that for us. South Street and 106 is a town-owned road, so that is under the select board's jurisdiction. It's a local roadway. DOT does not get involved. As John said, it's been that way since Route 106 got put in. So we did engage an engineering firm to do an assessment on that intersection to see what it qualifies for. So we're looking at, does it qualify for a traffic signal? Does it qualify for a four-way stop? Does it qualify for a readjustment in that intersection to make it two T intersections, similar to what we did at East Street and Cocasset Street? So they've done the traffic counts. They've gone through their preliminary assessment, but haven't finalized what their recommendation is yet. I'd like them to finish that work before we move forward with any other funding. I did ask them for quotes to actually do the design at those two locations. So for South Street and Route 106, they quoted $180,000 to do that intersection design, and that may be less if it's not a traffic signal. And then Commercial and Central Street, they quoted $325,000 to do that intersection design. And that's with the SERPET study that's already been done and pulling that information into an actual design that DOT can then approve and potentially fund in the future. So I think the numbers, John, like you said, we had talked about some lower numbers initially. When I talked to them, those were the two numbers that I got from them. And again, I would like South Street and 106 for them to finish that assessment to figure out what that's going to look like before we move forward with looking at almost $200,000 for that intersection.
Okay, so this is new information, and as you know, the citizen petition is rigid, and I met with Chris, I believe, back in November. So what I'm thinking at this point is lay off on the commercial, wait till Chris has a better understanding from Tech about 106 and South Street, and likely go ahead on the town meeting floor for maybe $200,000 to do South and 106, so that we can get that in line for the complete street funding, similar to East Street. I think that intersection, it's deadly, it's got to get done. You know, we could do it a different way, but we could do it this way too.
So I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of what Bill said. I don't disagree. I'm all for safety in our streets for people who are traveling them. I don't like, and again, my opinion, I don't like going to town meeting, like, you brought some stuff with the sidewalks, all good ideas. But we have a plan, and sidewalks are getting, someone came into the study. What I feel like is, when we bring something like this to town meeting, I mean, it all depends on who comes, who doesn't come, how they're gonna vote. If you want to back off one now, but in fact, if you had brought them both forward based on, the numbers that Chris just gave us, we're talking over $500,000, John. And that's only just to do the design. That doesn't mean we're going to get it done. Is there a way for us, I mean, we all heard about this, accident, and I'm gonna go out on a limb. I don't travel this road all the time. Probably depends on what time of day you're traveling it. A lot of times when I'm traveling, I don't see anybody going, cutting across. I just, maybe I'm not going in peak times, morning, rush hour, later, when school lets out. I think that the points you're making are very valid. I don't like the way to get it done. Because what I feel like is if you go to town meeting, and it gets voted, if the people say that we're bringing dollar figures up, that locks us into it. If you did, I don't even know if we have 200,000. I mean, the budget is very, very tight this year, very tight. And I'm not saying it's not a good place to spend our money, but I don't think we could fund this. And, you know, I think what might happen is then something's going, you know, a salary of 200,000, you know, to pay for this. So I guess my question is maybe to Chris and Paige, is there a way to work on this without actually bringing an article
Well, I
forward?
think Chris has already said he is.
Oh,
He's got,
okay.
both projects have things that are happening on
Okay.
them, but he doesn't have the stuff back yet.
Okay.
So,
So I can't hear him very well. So, but anyhow, but yet John and Jack still want to bring one of them forward instead of for 100,000, 200,000. So I guess I'm wondering, I mean, we can't stop you. I mean, you know, from bringing the petition forward. That's how it works. The board does take a vote on it, whether we support it or not.
Yeah.
That's just us. I'm just wondering, I just don't like the process. It's not what you're bringing forward. For me, it's the process.
So I, as a town resident, want to see this intersection safer, and I believe with the right design and construction, it can be safer. So I don't care if I do it, or if Chris does it, or if you guys as a board do it.
Yeah.
But if we say we can't afford it, we're not going to do it this year, okay, if we can't afford it this year, free cash is at 8 million, which is at an all-time high. If we can't take 200,000 out of 8 million to try to get us eligible for more state funding later, we're never going to do it. And this, out of maybe 6 areas of town that are very dangerous,
Yeah.
we're going to just have those 6 areas of town be
I'm going to
dangerous
respond now. I'm
forever.
going to go right to you. I guess what, so when I pull out of where I live
Yep.
onto Cohasset, it's very dangerous.
Yeah.
You know, and you've got coming around the corner on Cohasset, the other way, there's bushes and stuff you can barely see. You really sometimes have to really edge out before, you know. So what would stop from the people in Summerfield, next town meeting to bring that forward? Elm Street's a horror show as well. I guess that's what I mean. I think it's a good project.
Yeah.
I just hate it being forced at a certain time.
But my
Yeah.
opinion is this, my opinion is,
Yeah.
the DPW, every aspect of town were concerned with the budget. My opinion is, out of all the town departments, DPW, and you're going to disagree with me, is historically underfunded in a way that, well, I know you love the school department, Bill, and they're the
all the
hungriest.
town departments. I'm not
They're the
worried about it.
hungriest monster in the town, but the DPW, in my opinion, is historically underfunded over decades in a way that they're not able to address construction. They can't keep up with maintenance. So if we have these areas of town that really need something to make them safer, whether it's a citizen petition or you as a board directing Paige to help the budget push those areas, they're not going to get done unless we put money to them in some way. And the areas of town I looked at are based on statistics, working with and meeting with the DPW, talking with Chief Grace and Lieutenant Hoffman, and having people actually die at these areas very recently. If we can get the design done, we can then move forward on the complete street funding as we did with East Street. So there is precedence there for us getting these monies later. I don't know how else to do it, but say the DPW needs a little bit more money. If you look at Cohasset Street sidewalk, it's beautiful. It came out very nicely done by the DPW, but that was the first new sidewalk built in town for 25 years. And so if the philosophy is, I agree with you, it's safe, but we can't afford it, we'll do it some other time, that's what's happened over the last 25 years. Since the 1990s, no new sidewalk anywhere in Foxborough. How else can you do it but say, okay, if we want this stuff, we got to fund it a little bit. A couple $100,000 is what is needed.
One of the effects of this is we have a town budget that's dominated by large departments that have very focused needs, education, public safety. Who is it that is going to take and responsibility for activities for the broader public need? In principle, it could be this board. But given that it's that these broad public needs, and I say the broad public needs, I've driven through that South Street 106 intersection for 50 years, and I've seen it get worse and worse. There are some times a year when you look back up on 106 and you're looking directly into the sun. There's no way that you can see a vehicle coming. We need to take action not only on the focused needs of the departments, which are real, I'm not saying otherwise, but there are activities for the general public good that somebody has to take the lead on. The select board hasn't been doing that, therefore you get citizens petitions. And as John mentioned, there were no sidewalks, there was no sidewalk work done for about 20, 25 years. And so what happens now is we're trying to get 1 or 2 sidewalks done in addition to the DPW budget, which is underfunded. And so I think this is, the citizens petition is effectively the vent valve. And we're offering town meeting the vent valve because the structure called town government isn't responding.
I'm sorry, but I can't disagree with you more. You have 2 citizens input petitions that are coming before us, and we already have plans for both those petitions. After that accident, we told Paige and Chris we have to do something about 106 and Green Street.
That should have happened 10 years ago.
What?
That's the point.
It should have happened 30 years ago when they redesigned it. I mean, but it's being done. And these 2 citizen petitions are sort of like shutting the barn door after the horses have already left. We're already on it. Chris already has plans for both of them.
So the solution then is for the town, for the select board to take ownership of these 2 citizens petitions to town meeting.
Just the opposite. We took ownership of the problems already. They're being worked out. You can make funny faces if you want, but he's already got plans. He's already talked to the state about Commercial Street. We've already got plans and talked to.
Should be.
But it's been.
So Mark, I don't want us to get into an argument. We both want to work together on this. And there's a couple more areas of town that are dangerous and difficult, and I think what we need to do is build into the town process a little bit more budget and a little bit more focus to redesign and eliminate the danger in the areas that our residents are going through every day. Now, Stephanie, I agree with you. I wouldn't want 100 people trying to come in and do petitions, but over the last 5 years, that hasn't happened. And again, what I'm bringing forward is the areas that I think are the greatest problem. Now, we're focusing on this today because there was a recent death, but there's a couple other areas in town that I think over the next decade should get a solid look at, just 5 or 6 areas. And, you know, you're looking at this area now because there was a death there recently. West and South Street is very difficult. Commercial Street, now we have something going on, but you look at things like the town rotary is always a big question mark. Can we do something better there? There's a couple areas of town, if they're not in the plan, they'll never get done. And these 2 areas, you know they're dangerous.
So if I can make it a suggestion to go along with John's thought process of getting some of these other things in the queue, we do have our planning directors and economic development directors working on our master plan and strategic plan right now. So I think my recommendation would be to make sure that these projects that John is talking about and is passionate about get put into that master plan, or at least get to be part of that conversation, so that as a town, we have a master plan for the next 10 years, we can address and check off these projects. I know we have the prioritization plan as part of our complete streets process. You know, South and 106 is on our list, and I think will be the highest ranking project that we have. So that is the plan, is to move that forward with our next application process. I also am hopeful the state budget does include an increase in 50% for our Chapter 90 funding. So if that gets approved, that would give us an extra $300,000 to work towards some of these projects and do this design work. We can use that money for design. So the town is increasing the amount of money that we're spending on these projects. And recently, you know, an extra $350,000 in capital funding the last couple of years, and moving forward, the state fair share tax is added another $300,000 to our Chapter 90 allocation. So we are moving in the right direction. I've only been here for 10, going on 11 years. I've been in this role for 5. So I can't say what should have been done 30 years ago. Oh, I can only do what I can moving forward.
And what I'll say is Chris and his department have been very professional and attentive. I think they do a great job on everyday items and long-term planning. I think he's stepped into a hole that he's digging out of, and he could use your help on these issues when it comes time, and I'm glad to hear we're moving ahead. And I think what I'm hearing, Mark, is that when the study is done by Tech and they're coming out with a $200,000 figure, you as a select board will find a way to fund that from the town budget rather than through a citizen petition. Is that correct?
That would be the intent.
Yeah, it's a high priority for all of us.
Oh, exactly.
And if I could just chime in to just kind of wrap this part up and tie it into the next agenda item, is the strategic plan, because I think, going to what Steph has said, I think everybody is in support of this concept. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, your knowledge of being on AdCom and whatnot, you now know how to do this, you know, and it's been effective, and you got a great project done. That said, I do think this board, when you say you're now committing to that, this board is looking at a lot of competing interests, and safety is by no means not something to sneeze at. But I mean, they might be looking at another public safety official who's also saving a life. So there's a lot of variables for them. And I guess that my point is the strategic plan that we're going to be, the master plan Chris mentioned, and then the strategic plan that we're hoping to take on starting July 1 would help the community identify our priorities, because we do have so many competing interests, and most of them are financial. And if you put a survey out and says, do you support sidewalks? Do you want more sidewalks? I think most people are going to say yes. But if you rank, if you say, can you rank sidewalks, and you put up against some of the competing interests, I think that's when we'll start to see community priorities. So I think that's what you're sort of hearing the board say is, this is all great, but, and I hear your frustration with process, but I think there is a new group. We are moving, we are doing things. We have seen an increase in funding, the TRC money and the dedication on the staff. So I think the process is moving, and you've been helping and you're advocating, but I think the person you're advocating for is telling you, well, we have X, Y, and Z going on. So I don't know. I think it's better done in a whole picture rather than these isolated pictures, because the town meeting doesn't see the whole picture. These folks do.
And to hit off that page, I don't want anyone to think that I'm not for spending the money. Of course, and these are both great projects, but I guess, when I was on AdCom, Sean McCarthy, if he said the word stabilization fund once, he said it 100 times, right? So I agree that we have to get maybe a little more aggressive about getting some money put away. Mm-hmm. This is probably not going to come out how I want it to come out, but this has been 30 years. And I'm not saying we should have another death or another accident, okay? But I'm also thinking a little bit ahead. Hopefully we talk about the OPEB being funded. I mean, it was 32 at one point. I don't know if we're still 32, but roughly, that never ends, because you always have people, new employees and new retirees and benefits. But I think the town as a whole, and I'm not saying that it has to be 7 years from now, but when we fund that, then the next thing that money is supposed to be used for is roads, and that falls under sidewalks, and I would guess projects of this sort would fall under that. And I'm not saying we're going to sit back for 7 years and wait for that to be funded and then hit that, but I think chipping away little by little, and I think Chris has a good plan, and our master plan will hopefully tie a lot of that in. I just hate that we come up with, this is the project for right now. And I know you've done studies, but like I said, you know, even with the sidewalks, as soon as since this petition comes up, the next year you get another resident come up and say, we need our sidewalks done, we need this done. And that's my fear, that it just kind of snowballs and people think that's the way. I like what you're bringing to us.
My
I just
approach
hope
isn't, I want my neighborhood redone, it's what are the areas of town that I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying you're bringing up, but that's how people react to that. Oh, well, my side, you know, I mean, listen, I never made a complaint, but all of a sudden, how good did it look to see down Cocasset Street? Because, you know, that's where I live, down that end of town, and as I would come out and take a right to head uptown, you know, I see people walking their dogs, they're half on the street, half on, you know, and so, yeah, that a project like that got done, I can't say honestly that I say, oh my God, look how wonderful that looks now, and people are more safe, you know, so it's all good stuff. I want to head down this way because I've been yakking a lot, and I'm sure you have something to say, Dennis and Dick, so.
I'm sure I do.
Yeah.
So it's great to bring this here. I mean, it reminds me of a lot of the sidewalk discussion that started here, then we brought it to town meeting, and there was a whole lot of discussion. Maybe something came out of that, but, you know, the absence of an overall plan that was prioritized, I think, handicapped us in terms of how far we went with the sidewalks, and probably is still handicapping us in terms of, you know, what's the best way to address what is obviously, you know, a town-wide problem with sidewalks, and where do you get the funding? This smacks of kind of the same thing on steroids. You know, it's even more complicated, and it'll be a lot for people to digest at town meeting because, you know, we're talking about a couple of spots here, and somebody said there's 4 or 5 spots. And of these, out of the 4 or 5, are these most important 2 spots? You know, I, for one, need more information, you know. I drive those roads all the time, and that's a disaster waiting to happen, particularly when you're going down, you know, 140, Commercial Street, Central Street, coming in, you come out of Central Street and you take a right and you can't see people coming on the left. I mean, pick your poison, really, in terms of any turns you make in that particular area. So it's definitely an issue that needs to be addressed. I think we just need more information. We need more prioritization. We need to be more thoughtful about where the dollars come from. I think it's headed in the right direction. You know, you always do great work. It's headed in the right direction, but I think we need a lot more. I speak for myself, you know, need a lot more information to really bring a coherent package to town meeting so we don't end up with the same kind of dialogue we had around the sidewalks. And I think the starting point here is better than we were with the sidewalk conversation, because it seems like, you know, you did your homework, you learned, and now it's like, you know, let's make sure we tee this up the right way so people understand it and people, you know, can realize the vision here of what we're trying to accomplish and are willing to spend precious capital, you know, which is true.
So the other item,
Just one more quick thing, and that's just to come full circle. You know, your 4 or 5 things. One thing that came out of the sidewalks was that there was a plan discussion last year. There is a plan, and I think with your projects going forward, there's no doubt in my mind Paige is probably writing down as part of the long-term goals of this community that that's going to be a part of it.
thank you. Yeah.
Deb?
I agree with everything that's been said before me. My thoughts are that I'm uncomfortable with it being a citizen's input, a citizen's petition, and would like to see the process that's developed followed. The projects are necessary, and I have faith that they will get done in a timely manner within the parameters of the proper process.
Thank you, Debbie.
Yeah, I think one last thing that I want to add is, not to throw anybody under the bus, but I think as a town, we've learned that some of our buildings weren't taken care of the way they should have been, and that led us into having to, you know, build new. And I think the one thing we learned is that how, you know, I'm using it to compare it, that the town in general is learning how to keep things up so we don't all of a sudden say, oh, we need a whole new with the sidewalks. And I remember when on AdCom, the first year I had DPW and water and sewer, and Roger was still the DPW director. And I remember we walked in and he said, we have 17 miles. Do you remember this conversation, Chris? 17 miles of pipes and that need to be replaced and worked on. And I remember thinking, like, 17 miles, that's a lot. And we, you know, Roger and then Chris coming in behind Roger was, it was about playing catch up. And I think the one thing I can honestly say, I feel like it maybe in the last, like, 8 to 10 years, we're starting to not be like, okay, now we have to come in and replace everything. We're, you know, it's a process. Doc said it. It's a process. And I think we're learning that we do need to put some money away, put some stabilization away, and get working. Like again, everything you said is wonderful, and I don't disagree with anything. It's just wondering if there's a better process to get it done. That's all. That's all for me. You guys have anything else? All right, let's head on.
Thank you. So the next item is Maple Ave, and again, if you could take one and pass it down, have the rest for tomorrow night.
You want these ones back? Your meeting?
And, you know, we've covered a lot of the philosophy, and the discussion tonight, of course, was pretty in-depth. And I certainly learned a lot, and I think we all learned a lot about what we're doing in town. And when I put these together back in October, November, there was a lot of information and actually planning and resources that weren't put together yet. So back in 2019, the town came up with a Complete Street Plan. Complete Streets is a program through Massachusetts state law that a town can draft a plan and submit to the state for funding about which areas in town would be best for replacement, redesign of sidewalk, replacement, redesign of certain intersections, and also bike infrastructure. And the town of Foxborough has about 40 projects. The estimate on the project to do all of them in 2019 dollars was $10 million. And Chris has been making very good progress in doing a number of these various projects. East Street, we received, I believe, $400,000 from the state to redo. And Chris has been working on a number of the projects, mostly maintenance, replacement of existing surfaces. Also at town meeting a few years ago, we funded the Comcast Street new sidewalk. And out of these projects, number 1 and number 3 are done. Various other projects are done. Number 2 is Maple Ave. And Maple Ave connects Mechanic and Comcast Street. It's downtown. It's an area that is next to schools, the YMCA, the center of town. If you look at the current handout, you can see the sidewalk is chopped up into pieces. It's down to the very ground, crumbling to pieces. And based on it being number 2 on the Complete Street Plan, based on the dilapidated construction, and based on its centralness to both schools, center of town, businesses, YMCA, I thought this is the project that the town should have on its radar. If there is additional funding available from free cash to put towards a one-time infrastructure program, I think this is the one that's appropriate. And I don't live in this area of town, so it's not, I want this for my neighborhood. I think this is the best one for you know, people going back and forth between important destinations in the town. And I don't know if Chris would want to speak to the other projects on this list that he did recently, but with this plan being published in 2019, we've made a little bit of progress. Most of the progress has been in the last 2 to 3 years. I don't think all the projects on that plan should be done, but when looking at some of the top 10 ones, I do think they should get done as they were determined by this town as necessary.
Since I'm at the table here, and by the way, I avoided Maple Ave when I was a kid on my 3-speed because it was too steep, so I'd always cut through. But I would say, on this particular project, we are coming up into a historic moment of the sale of the Foxborough company. And we took that massive project and we talk about mitigation. Maple Ave could become one of those roads that's impacted directly, and that's probably something that we could leverage the new property owners, depending on what goes in there, as something that we could offset that cost onto. And this is what Mass DOT specifically cited, is infrastructure and change is when you can make improvements like this. So just food for thought.
There is another cut-through street next to it, which is Pleasant Street, which is right next to the YMCA. That also speaks to the Foxborough company cut-through for the same purpose, for the same reason.
Yeah, exactly.
So that's a little more involved when you look at what has to be done. And that alone says, well, we'll go for Maple Avenue rather than Pleasant Street, because Pleasant does have some challenges in it.
Jack, maybe we get both.
So I think this actually kind of proves the point of what we're talking about, John, though. When you look at this, number 16 is South Street, Green Street.
Correct.
It's been on here as a priority. It is something that the town is working towards, as you said, funding-wise, trying to get some of this stuff done. So maybe the priority shouldn't be 16, maybe the priority should be, 4. But I think in working with existing stuff that we've already highlighted as being some of our major concerns, and maybe reprioritizing some of those over time is more the way to go after things than to just say, okay, we're just going to jump the line and just take everything else out of context. Because I'll tell you, as much as I'd like the Cocasset Street sidewalk, it took away from us doing other sidewalks that people walk constantly on around town that are in horrendous shape. And they had to get, pulled off because we didn't have the funding to do both. So that's exactly what that did. It didn't just give us more funding to do it.
So my request was from free cash, which can be used for a number of things. And I don't think free cash has ever been used for any sidewalk project. So it's not like Chris planned to do,
But if you watch our recent things on where free cash is,
yeah.
it's not $8 million anymore. And it's, by the time we get to town meeting, it's going to be down to basically what our minimum required level is. So it's not like that's, is a never, ending, fund to use. We've been talking about it all year as far as what's happening to it already, that won't exist. So while I agree 200 out of 8 million sounds like nothing, there were so many big projects that have been waiting, and that's what we're putting in towards, so.
And I think the important thing tonight, Bill, is that we all agree that there was a deficit in this kind of infrastructure maintenance and expansion, and it's good to see, and Mark, it's good to see you pointed out as well, the town's working on this. But I'd like the town to commit to this to the long term,
Oh, I think it has to be a long term.
Yeah.
I think we all agree it has to be a
Yeah.
long-term commitment.
So
None of us disagree with that, John.
what I think, taking the temperature of the room, 140, there's things happening, and we should wait and see how it's going to go with the state. Maple, I think you guys are concerned with the budget, but I think the big thing that I'm going to ask you to commit to is funding the 180 or 200,000 for 106 and South Street, because that is a very, and I know, Stephanie, you're not familiar with it, but it's bad. It's very bad there. And
But I still want to see what Chris's thing
Yeah.
comes back with. Because they could come back with a plan that basically we don't need to develop something else on, that they could actually just do.
so nothing?
No, actually, if the engineering thing comes back and says what you need to do is put in T intersections,
Yeah,
the town could do that
right,
with road funding.
correct.
The right funding.
Without going out and spending $200,000 on a design, concept that way.
So will the town fund that?
I think as we move forward, yes, that's what we're looking to do. But it's not, again, by just pulling that $200,000, it could be something that we don't get state funding for 6, 7, 8 years, which means we didn't spend $200,000 on something that we could have done tomorrow.
Chris, what do you think the timeline is to find out on that?
It's probably another 6 to 8 weeks before I have that final assessment from TEC on that intersection.
Well, and also, John, again, and I'm going to say this right up front, I don't mean any disrespect, because you two gentlemen are two gentlemen that I do respect, and I do respect the time I spent on AdCom with you, which wasn't a long time, because then I jumped here. But when you do this, right, so you're coming forward and you want to say what the priority project is. And that should be here with Chris, and then, if we want to talk about, funding at some point, and I still feel that request should come from Chris. I feel like Chris should then maybe look at the big plan, maybe come to CIP and say, hey, listen, could we throw $100,000 this year, $200,000, whatever the figure is, I don't know what the exact figure would be, and then work from there. So the money's being built up, but so I feel like what you want us to do is you and Jack want to come in. You want to tell us which project is, and it could be the project Chris would pick too. I don't know that, but I feel like we have citizens telling us what project. And, like you said, I still want this one. I kind of feel that all should be coming from the expert. And then he comes to us and says, hey, listen, I've got to ask for some money for a CIP. Or, like this has been prioritized, but we're gonna skip how it is, and we're you guys are gonna come in, bring before us, and then we're gonna have a room full of people at town meeting vote because they just feel like, oh yeah, and I hate to say it, but using emotion. I don't know if the 106 is the priority. I don't know if that's the number one priority, but you're going to get people from that end of town, and I wouldn't blame them, okay? People from that, the people who travel it, the emotion of losing lives, that'll all interplay, but I feel like these decisions are supposed to come from the DPW director and then brought to us. Does anybody feel the same
Well, no,
way?
I think the way I more look at it, like, if John and Jack really are concerned about this, they should be working with Chris
Yeah.
as the overall priority. I mean, Chris doesn't
Yeah.
have to sit there as an island.
Yeah.
And just like we're not an island.
Yeah.
But your input to them and support of them at town meeting on these type of priorities.
Yeah.
I mean, being involved with the DPW as far as what the priority list and stuff is, I think it's the right way to go. But not to jump the list.
The decisions on how much to allocate to the DPW are made long before town meeting. So supporting him at town meeting doesn't help. Those decisions were made.
Yeah, but I think
But here's,
that would be Chris
Requesting.
putting
I
the
think-
request
I think-
in, and then bringing it to CIP and saying, hey, listen, we've got what's going on at 106 was horrendous, and I'd like to jump on that. Him kind of using the prioritizing, and then, but I do agree, we should maybe start putting some money aside. So even if it's just saying that it's not this year that we're going to, maybe it's next year, but I agree it's a problem, and I commend you for all of this, but I just don't know, like I said, for me, it's the process, and I think we're jumping the person that probably knows the most in what he wants to get done and when he wants to get done. I'm going to throw it all to Chris and say Chris has to, and maybe with some discussion from you guys, because obviously you've developed a good relationship with him, you've had conversations with him, but I think it's got to come from him and say, hey, listen, these are the projects, I need these done. And of course, then it brings public safety in. The chief knows where the trouble spots are, where the accidents are happening. I think that everybody getting together and saying, this is what we need, and then finding out how we can fund it, rather than just coming to town meeting and say, this is the one. And because I don't think anybody's going to say that there isn't a problem in a lot of different places in town. So that's how I'm looking at it. I commend what you're doing, but.
I think if I can just add one more thing
Sure, Chris, go
that
ahead.
may go along with this, finish this conversation or kind of try to tie it up. So the board does have a financial policy. The town has a financial policy that talks about how much funding we're going to dedicate to streets and sidewalks every year. And I know that goes back and there's history on that, but with the OPED money, that was kind of where that was the meals tax. That's where that was going to be dedicated and split. But the town has come back around and put, that extra $350,000 a year to get us to $1 million funding. So I think if the larger conversation is that we should be spending more money on our pavements, sidewalks, intersections, transportation projects, then that probably is the larger conversation that goes along with that financial policy that the board and the town has in place. And those are things, if the discussion leads to, hey, we should be spending 1.3 million, then we need to figure out how we get that money, and then we can pick at these projects, quicker. The other thing is, there's only so many contractors, and there's only so much work that we can get done every year. So at some point in time, there's a breaking point. And we saw it this past year where we were hoping to get the sidewalk on South Street done too. And we just ran out of time with the contractor that we have under contract to do that sidewalk work. So that's, set up for the first thing in the spring, which is good. It's still the same fiscal year. And then something like Maple Ave, it's a small project. That replacing that sidewalk's probably $75,000. That's something that can fit into our, fiscal year plan to do sidewalk work. Although I like Chief Grace's idea of putting it on whoever buys the Foxborough company property on Neponset and making them pay for it.
Well, I thank the board for this in-depth discussion. I hope it leads to better, safer streets, more accessible, and more enjoyable town for everyone. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you so much, John and Jack. Sorry, I'm logged out.
Strategic planning.
Good dog. Awesome.
Want me to go
Okay,
ahead?
next up, strategic planning.
So you have on your board docs, or I know it's called community, I updated the memo about the strategic plan, and I threw a few things down, a possible name, just going crazy here. Vision 2030, Foxborough's future. That's just, I'm just throwing these ideas out there, but not something that to be decided. I think the committee would decide that.
Yeah.
So
Thank you.
from the proposed strategic planning committee composition, here's what I'm recommending. I'm recommending a select board representative, an advisory committee representative, and a school committee representative, 2 business owners, 2 residents at large, and then I would be ex officio and the finance director would be ex officio. Throwing those out there, not set in stone, willing to discuss, just curious, your thoughts, if that's a good, I'm trying to, we discussed at the last meeting, it would be so great to find a way to kind of reach outside the usual suspects. Not that we don't love our usual suspects, but we know they're going to participate. I would love to get to that outer core where people we don't usually hear from, who don't really feel like they have a say, at least to touch them a bit. So the residents at large and the business owners are kind of an attempt to get someone from outside of government to represent sort of the non-governmental agencies. But open for discussion, if anybody has any thoughts. I know, Dennis, you've done a few strategic plans.
Well, I have some, thoughts locally. I've done a lot of strategic plans, but the only thing that jumps out at me is we have a couple of very gifted department directors that are really big picture thinkers, particularly in the area of strategic planning, and that's in the public safety area, the police chief and the fire chief. So one of them, both of them, I don't know, but I think that they would add a lot to the process because they've been doing some semblance of strategic planning in their own departments for a while, whether it's accreditation or, you know, actually going through a strategic planning process, I think in the police department.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah, so just would throw that out. I think it sends a good message, too.
Would you say adding another body, would you want to go up to 9 voting members? Like, so add either one of the chiefs maybe, and then maybe try to find one more to make it an uneven number?
No, I would add both of them.
Add both of them?
Or- Yeah, or
That
they
might be
they could be
overkill.
ex officio too.
Well, no, so you'd have 4 that are not interrelated and 5 that are interrelated, plus the 2 ex officios.
Do you think, though, I feel like police and fire chiefs, I feel like that's redundant. I mean, I feel like if you were going to grab one of the chiefs, and then maybe, I don't even know, I'm trying to think of who else, what other expertise at the table would benefit from a strategic planning perspective. Because I think there's a lot of overlap with the 2 chiefs.
Well, then Chris would be
Chris
the
would be a
next-
good choice.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what we were talking, you know, what we were telling John and Jack, that with the strategic plan coming up, that this would be a good opportunity to make sure we're covering that, so. I think that's a
So
good
talk to the
catch.
2 chiefs and see which one's more interested.
I think it's going to be who gets the short straw.
Yeah.
You don't
I'm
want,
surprised they're not texting me going, I'm not in.
I'm taking that week off.
which one are we going to offend?
I don't think we'll offend either.
And then just with respect to timing, we don't even know if we're definitely doing a strategic plan because it is subject to CIP funding. So on March 1st, we have our CIP meeting, and as we've said, there's a lot of competing interests, so we'll see how this fleshes out. Then town meeting, and then in the interim, I think we'd be having that committee work on the RFP, start formulating sort of a vision for this whole process, and then bring on a consultant as soon as possible after July 1, with the hope of the strategic plan dovetails nicely in the fall. As the master plan's kind of wrapping up, maybe we could extend it into strategic plan, and then I think the consultant would inform us of the other steps. But that was just sort of my general milestones that I put in there. So
So when are you looking for a final product?
the actual strategic plan or
The committee.
the committee?
The committee.
No, the actual plan.
Oh.
I don't know, I don't know how long it typically takes. If it's a full year, that might be too long.
Yeah, I mean, I think 6 months typically to do the plan is
Yeah, so
how often you're going to meet, but.
right.
you know.
But I would imagine, like, if we started contracting around July 1, I don't think they'd start with a real process till the fall. So then I would hope that by July 1 the next year, we'd be done, you know? So might not be a full 12 years, but it'd be 12 years, 12 months. Feel like 12 years. But, yeah, so something like that. But I would obviously follow the experts' recommendations on that. So that's all I have on the strategic plan, just trying to keep it topic. We'll see how it fares at capital planning.
What's the amount we're asking for?
Just 100,000.
Okay.
Sounds good to me. Anybody else, any other questions for Paige? Comments, anything?
Go right into my report.
Sounds like you have a very good strategic plan for the strategic plan.
Very strategic. So the annual town meeting warrant has closed. Katie, where are we at articles? It's changing by the moment.
Excuse me, 36?
36, okay. And we're just continuing with our AdComs meetings. The J.C.'s Spring Craft and Vendor Fair has been scheduled for May 3rd on the Common. We had another concert announcement for June 21st. Who was that? That was George Strait and Chris Stapleton. Yeah. And then we had the weekend, June 10th to 11th. Right now, there's 9 concerts scheduled for the summer. We did get an email from the state last week telling us that they're closing the Comfort Inn as an emergency assisted shelter by Sunday, August 31st. So stay tuned for more on that. But we did get that email. We do have 2 openings on the Personnel Board, and that's something, I know you met Mike Mullen earlier today, and he's going to be bringing some policies, and he needs to bring the pay plan forward for seasonal workers. So putting it out to the throngs of people watching out there in the public, if there's 2 people out there that are interested in volunteering for the Personnel Board, it's a very light lift. It meets just a couple times a year, but it's a great opportunity to serve your community. So if there's an application form on the web under, what is that under?
Boards and committees.
Boards and committees. Thank you, Katie. Under Human Resources also, we had some advancements over and transitions over at the Fire Department. Captain Jim Grenier has been promoted to Deputy Chief. Lieutenant Cordy Shepherdson has been promoted to Captain. Lieutenant Brian Foley has been promoted to Captain. Firefighter P.J. Bellum has been promoted to Lieutenant, and Firefighter Sean Philbin has been promoted to Lieutenant. So congratulations to all them. They had the promotional process. This is all due to the retirements, Tom Buckley and Andrew Patini leaving. Collective bargaining, just wanted to give you an update. We are well underway. We've had upwards of 4 or 5 meetings with several of the bargaining units, 2 or 3 with the others, but we're well into it. Starting to feel like we're making some progress, so hopefully we'll have something to bring forward to town meeting, but we are in progress, and having Mike have such a smooth transition between Paige and Mike has been so beneficial. Lastly, I did go to the Norfolk County Retirement Board today. I think I mentioned to you before that that they are looking at their assessments. Our assessment, we're okay for this year. Next year is a big jump. What they've decided to do is they're going to do new valuations, and we probably won't know until next fall what our hit is going to be. Worst case scenario is what we already know, but if the board does vote to smooth out those big jumps, then it might be less, but we don't think it'll be worse. So we're planning for the worst, hoping for the best. Yes. So, and I have been invited to sit on the Center of Public Safety Excellence Boards of Directors. So that's as a result when we went for accreditation. Then Chief Kelleher passed on that they were looking for a town or city manager, and submitted my resume and interviewed, and was accepted to the Board of Directors. I'll let you know more what that's involved in, but what I see right now is, for example, I'm going to be they're paying for me to go down to a meeting, and as part of that, there's a conference, and there's 1 full day. I have some notes here. Some of the classes that I'm going to take, and these are all free, by the way, is values-based leadership and personnel decisions, leadership development for those who don't need it, toxic leadership, overcoming destructive leadership, finally putting your people in their place the working genius way, that's interesting, and then leadership through upstream thinking. So this is an opportunity for me, I think, to gain some training as well through the public safety side, which is a little more, they have a very good chain of command and very good leadership model, so I look forward to that. And as I said, it's no cost to the town, so I get the benefit of getting some training kind of outside the town genre, so I look forward to that. And that's all I have for today.
Okay. Select Board update. So I just wanted to mention that I had a very lovely Saturday morning that Paul Dumas asked me to come and be a guest speaker for the Friends of Foxborough Seniors at their monthly meeting. And so I went in, just kind of gave them a little update about the budget, you know, what would be coming up. They know Paige is coming in to go over to talk to them about warrant articles and different stuff. And I did reach out to Bill, because I know Bill spoke with them back in, maybe November. And he gave them a nice update about the community center. And so Bill took me for a quick ride over and showed me where they are, so I could just give them a mini version of, what's going on over there. Of course, I'm sure Mark is telling them all the big stuff, but it was a very nice morning. They were very welcoming to me, and I appreciated that, and it was nice. We got to meet some new friends, so that was kind of nice. I want to throw the ball over to Dennis. Dennis wanted to have a minute.
I caught it.
There you go, Dennis.
So ironically, it's this week makes 7 years I've been in Foxborough, arrived 7 years ago and starting our 8th year in Foxborough. And we love it. And it's been a great decision for Laura and I and our family. Before coming to Foxborough, this is going to be short, don't worry. Before coming to Foxborough, I was a CEO for 17 years in Boston and Providence, Cambridge and Providence. And the nature of that position is you do a lot of work in the community. You're always out. You're always cheering something. You really don't have any time to do anything in the community. And that bothered me because I really wanted to do a lot of things in the community to really kind of give back. And I really mean that. I know people all say that, but that's kind of who I am. So there was an opportunity to come here, and I didn't fully retire, but it was an opportunity to come here and do something for this community. And I loved it. So, and I still love it. And so I started out with the advisory committee, did my 3 years at the advisory committee, got to know Stephanie on the advisory committee. We worked together a little bit, and got to know Paige on the advisory committee, because you seemed like you were always in front of us as the planner. So I did, really did that, and then 3 years on the select board. And now we're at a point where I don't want to hold anyone up who's really wants to make a decision in terms of whether they jump in and run for office this year. So I'm just formally announcing that I'm not going to run for another 3 years. And 6 years was consistent with my goal. I'm at that age where, there's other things I still want to do. I'm not going to be in a rocking chair anywhere. But there's a lot of things I still would like to do. And 6 years is probably my goal, of really doing something for the town, meaningful. And I think that we have done some very meaningful things around this table, whether it was the advisory committee or last year's select board and now this year's select board. And I've enjoyed working with all of you, and I think this select board has really come together, frankly. I've watched it evolve, from, last May, and it's really come together. And I've enjoyed it, and I think that we're working really well together as a board, and I've enjoyed that as well. And Paige is doing a great job. So it's all good, and I think it's a good time to really kind of step back and, give other people a chance out there. Hopefully there will be other people that are out there. I know of at least one that's interested, but
Yeah, well,
that was it.
well, we're not gonna wish you well right now because
Right.
you're stuck with us for a couple of more months. But I do want to say, to piggyback off what you just said, resident at large, strategic planning. So just keep that in the back of your mind. That might be right up your alley.
You thought you were getting away.
That's right. Just something to throw at you, Dennis. Plenty of time to decide. All right, thank you so much, and thanks. Dennis sent me a text over the weekend telling me, and I said, I grabbed him as he came in just to see if he would like to, formally say it to everybody. I didn't want to spill any of his news. It was his news, but like I said, it's been a pleasure, and I think every board is a good board. It just works a little differently. And the puzzle pieces fit a little differently sometimes, but as well as a pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody else have anything for?
I have something.
For selectmen?
I do. 2 weeks ago, I was reached out, a resident reached out to me and wanted to know what they could do about the pothole in front of their house. I'm not sure what answer I was supposed to provide, so I provided the See-Click Fix app. It was done the next morning.
Awesome.
So, great reviews on that. Happy resident, nice road, but kudos to the highway department for having this app and for their response time.
Fabulous.
It
Thank you
works.
for letting us know. Yeah, that's great. We don't hear about those things, so they just do that, and no one ever even knows they're getting it done.
Yep.
So it's nice to hear.
Yeah, it was nice for the resident. It was a great response time.
That's great. All right, we're good for the selectmen's update? All right. Action items, Deborah.
Motion to approve a use of public way application, Foxborough Youth Baseball and Softball Opening Day Parade, April 12th, 2025, from 9:30 to 11 a.m. Route to move down Bird Street to Railroad Ave, through the Common to South Street, ending at the Booth Field.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Motion to approve a use of public way application for the Sage School 5K road race on May 17th, 2025, starting at 9 a.m. Sage School parking lot to Mechanic Street, right on Cabot Drive, right on Eastman Ave, right on Oak Street, right on Kerr Road, left on Richard Street, left on Webb Street, left on Oak Street, left on Mechanic Street, to end at the Sage School.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve a use of public way application for the Hockomock Area YMCA's 2025 Spare Family Kindness for Kids 5K on September 13th, 2025 at 8 a.m. Race starts in the YMCA driveway, 67 Mechanic Street, and goes left onto Mechanic Street, right on Railroad Ave, left on Bird Street, right on Baker Street, right on Chestnut Street, left on Pond Ave / Fox Hill Road, right on Chestnut Street, right on Mechanic Street to the YMCA.
Second.
On discussion, just to let everybody know at home, by the time this gets to us as an application, it's already been vetted, just so everybody knows. We're not just saying, okay, all this, public safety knows, so just a FYI. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Motion to appoint Francis Slattery to the Historic District Commission for a term to end 5/31/2028.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion to approve Select Board meeting minutes from February 4th, 2025.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Come on, the easy one.
What? Oh, motion to adjourn.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
It was almost.